Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're looking at 5 sell-high tight ends that we think are good based on their value, free agency changes, coaching changes, anything like that. If we expect them to draft a tight end or just their overall value at this point in time. Watch the end of this video, and I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be surprised with some of the names on this list. Let's go ahead and get the obvious one out of the way. We're looking at Jonnu Smith for the Miami Dolphins. He's a screaming sell high at this point. He finished as the tight end 4. Just had some absolutely monstrous games this year. You see his dynasty value. I mean, he's been in the league for a while, and he just hasn't really been that guy at the tight end position for a long time. But now he randomly has these big-time games, right? The Dolphins' offense was very confusing this year with Tua going down, and I think they just gave it to Jonnu over and over because he was basically the safety net. I think in the offseason, the Dolphins are going to have everything figured out for the most part, and I don't think Jonnu Smith's going to be utilized as much. So it's just one outlier season for him, and his value, as you see, is skyrocketed. So, and he's fairly old as well. He's going to be 30 at the beginning of the season. So there's so many things here that's just ship him off. And you are about to see how much value he has and what you can actually get for him in terms of a trade package. So before we look at some of the trades that you can get for Jonnu Smith at this point in time, let's go over the Dolphins offense. So like we said, Tua Tagovailoa is their starting quarterback. And if you were a Tyreek Hill or a Jalen Waddle owner last year, when Tua went down, that offense was just a headache to watch, mainly because of a lack of a backup quarterback. I guess they thought Skylar Thompson was the answer. That was absolutely not the case. And then Brett Hundley came in, and he was about as bad outside of some rushing upside, right? So they brought in Zach Wilson, who I think is much better than both of those two guys. So if Tua does continue on this injury-plagued career of his, Zach Wilson, I think, can come in and step up the game a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be throwing to tight ends as much. I think he's going to be focused on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then you have some rookies on the rise like Malik Washington and Taj Washington. I don't know if they're going to be as included. And then they brought Nick Westbrook-Akine in as well from the Titans. He had like 7 or 8 touchdowns last year, not as many yards. I think he only had like 400 or 500 yards, but he'll be a solid addition to the offense as well. So I think Jonnu Smith is kind of the outlier in this situation. Now, looking at some of the trades, this is absolutely insane. Jonnu Smith, who I think, not that great of a tight end at this point. He'll have some big games, I guess, next year, maybe. But I don't think he's going to continue the production by any means. And then Rachaad White, who's basically an afterthought in the Buccaneers offense. If you had him in fantasy last year, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Both of those non-factor guys, in my opinion, you can get Chuba Hubbard for. Now, maybe a month or two ago, Chuba Hubbard would be a much more exciting addition with, the Rico Dowdle signing to Carolina is kind of hampering Chuba Hubbard's value a little bit, but I still think he's going to be the workhorse in that offense, in my opinion, but maybe slightly less carries. I still would much rather have Chuba Hubbard in this scenario. Then Jonnu Smith goes for a big trade package, a late second, a late third, a mid-4th, and a late 4th this year. That's 4 picks for a 30-year-old tight end with no production outside of this past season. I'm taking the picks all day. I love the 2025 class. I'm doing that all day, including Sunday. Now, if you looked at the buy low wide receivers video, you'll see that this trade was included there as well. Jonnu Smith straight up for Chris Godwin. They're around the same age. Chris Godwin has proved to be a better player for a longer period of time than Jonnu Smith. So I'm taking Chris Godwin all day there. So this is just kind of a baseline of what you can get for Jonnu Smith. If there's a guy that's really interested in Jonnu Smith, give him something like this. And if you can get, anywhere close to any of these trades, I would smash accept on any of those. All right, let's start talking about it. Sam Laporta, after his fantastic rookie season, he kind of fell off a little bit, and that's not very uncommon with tight ends. But as of right now, he's like the tight end 3 overall on Keep Trade Cut, which I think that's overpriced for him at this point. The Lions kind of struggled to get him the ball this year, and he was a little hurt this year as well. And he had pretty good production. I'm not saying Sam Laporta is a bad tight end. He finishes the tight end 8. But right now, I think he's valued higher than his actual production level is going to be for the next few years. Now, you see, it would have been a little bit better to trade him about a year ago because of his absolutely insane upside, which is what our next guy, if you know foreshadowing a little bit, you'll understand why the next guy on the list is here. But his value has tanked a little bit, and I think it's going to tank even further if he underperforms next year as well, which is possible because the Lions offense, they lost Ben Johnson. And before we go into some of these trades in just a moment, let's go ahead and look at the Lions offense a little bit. Jared Goff's the quarterback, solid game manager quarterback that can, get the ball around when he needs to. Jahmyr Gibbs, fantastic. In my opinion, might be the RB1 in fantasy for me in terms of my rankings. David Montgomery's a great relief back. Then you have the wide receiver room, Amon-Ra St. Brown, absolutely fantastic slot receiver. Jameson Williams is going to be your XZ type of receiver, your speedster. Then they brought in Tim Patrick, who's been, a very solid 500 to 800 yard guy for the majority of his career. So I think he will produce on this offense and be a, kind of a piece, kind of like how I want to say Craig Reynolds was there last year. He'll probably pick that piece up there. And then at the tight end position, Sam Laporta. He didn't have much competition at the tight end position, so I think he's going to be their sole tight end that's going to be out there unless they bring in a power formation, 12 personnel, right? It's just I think they're going to run the ball a lot more this year, and Jared Goff is going to regress just because Ben Johnson, that offense was so awesome. And I think they're going to regress. And if that's the case, I think Sam Laporta's value is just too high. Looking at some of these trades, first trade here, you're giving up Sam Laporta and the 309 to grab a 2026 second and Devonta Smith, who, if you're a Devonta Smith owner, he's a little frustrating, right? He's either going to go 3 for 35 or 40, or he's going to go 6 for 125 and a touchdown or 2. So he's a little frustrating, but I definitely think he's got more upside than Sam Laporta in my opinion. And you're basically trading up around. I know it's next year. The 2026 class isn't that great at this point in time, but you're trading the late third. So I think that's a solid deal. I would take the Devonta Smith side. Moving on next, you're basically trading up here. Now, Trey McBride is a tight end that I think will be a consistent valuable asset for the next few years just with how the Cardinals offense runs. You're trading a late second and Sam Laporta for Trey McBride. Like I said, Trey McBride is the focal point of that offense. I don't think that changes. And, man, I would love to trade a late second and Sam Laporta, who I think is going to regress even more, for, in my opinion, the second best tight end in all of fantasy. Now, the final trade here, you can trade Sam Laporta for a late first. I'm taking that all day. The 108 in most leagues is going to get you Tyler Warren, and I would much rather Tyler Warren than Sam Laporta at this point in time. Yep, you're seeing that right. The third guy on this list is Brock Bowers. Finishes the tight end 1, had probably the best tight end season of all time for a rookie. So why is he on this list? There's a few reasons. Do I think Brock Bowers is a bad player? Absolutely not. I think he's a top 3 tight end in fantasy at this point. The problem is he's going in the first round in startups. Unless you are in a absolutely heavy tight end premium league, I don't think a tight end is worth that much in a startup. We'll get into the trades in a moment, but he's going for a lot of value at this point in time. And with Sam Laporta, he had a similar situation, right? The Raiders are probably going to bring in more skill position players. It's literally Brock Bowers and undrafted free agent Jacoby Myers. That's literally all they have. And I'm pretty sure Geno Smith is going to want more skill position players rather. And I think Brock Bowers is just going to get less targets, I think. And I think he's going to regress. He literally, I do not think he can consistently put up the numbers he did last year. I think he'll be good. He'll be a Hall of Fame tight end as long as he stays healthy. But for what he's going for right now, I can't pass up that value. So before we get into these insane trades, let's go ahead and look at the Raiders offense at this point in time. You got Geno Smith, AOC, and Carter Bradley at quarterback. Geno Smith is going to be the QB1 in that offense. And, he's solid. He's a good game manager, right? I think he can get the ball to Brock Bowers a decent amount. And then at the running back position, they're going to have to draft a running back. Raheem Mostert as the RB1 is just not going to work. Then you have at your receiver positions, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker. They're going to have to draft probably 2 or 3 wide receivers unless they're just tanking another year. And then you have Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, who, I'm surprised. Michael Mayer was a second-round pick, I believe. And they just haven't utilized him at all. So, there's no competition for Brock Bowers at this point in time, but I would be shocked if there's not more competition after the NFL draft. Now, looking at some of these trades, you can ship Brock Bowers in a 3rd round for 2026 for Zach Ertz, who, he's on his last leg, but Lamar Jackson, who finished as the QB1 this past season, and, 3-time MVP or 2-time MVP, should have been a 3-time MVP this past year. They gave it to Josh Allen instead. But one of the highest upside quarterbacks in the entire NFL for Brock Bowers and a 3rd-round pick. And you get a tight end replacement in Zach Ertz, who I don't know how good he does next year. Probably not great. But that is insane value. You're basically getting Brock Bowers straight up for Lamar Jackson. I'm taking Lamar Jackson every single time in that situation. Yeah, he's older, but I don't really care. Next up, Brock Bowers for Drake London, who's a wide receiver 1, and Devon Achane, who is a top 5 Dynasty running back at this point in time, for a tight end. That's insane. I'm taking the upgrade to my wide receiver room and my running back room, and I'll find one of the buy low tight ends that you'll see soon in that video. I'll take one of those for like a 3rd or a 4th round pick and be sitting pretty. So yes, Brock Bowers would absolutely be shipped off for Drake London and Devon Achane, and I wouldn't even feel bad about it at all. Finally, Brock Bowers for a 2025 late first, a 26 first, and a 27 first. 3 firsts for Brock Bowers. I'll take that all day of the week because it seems like every single year you're getting one of these generational tight ends that's going in the 1st round. I think Brock Bowers is going to regress. He's still going to be a great top 5 tight end in fantasy, but he's not going to be consistent as this tight end 1. I don't think his value is going to ever be higher than it is right now, so it's time to cash in on that value. All right, another powerhouse tight ends on the list. George Kittle is the next sell high tight end here, mainly just because of age, right? I think eventually he's going to be falling off. I don't know if it's this year or next year, but he's just had a consistent value. And at some point you're going to have to move on from him for peak value. And I think this is going to be the year. Obviously, George Kittle is a Hall of Fame tight end. I think he's very good at what he does, as a blocker, as a receiver as well. Very versatile player. But at some point, he's overdue for an injury. He'll have one season where he's really good. Next year he'll have an injury, right? So his value could tank very easily at this point in time. And just where he's sitting at in terms of value, I think it's just a good time to move off of him and get one of these trades that you're about to see in just a moment. Before we get into these trades, let's go ahead and look at the 49ers offense real quick. Brock Purdy and Mac Jones are your quarterback tandem. I think Brock Purdy is relatively solid, above average quarterback in that top 10 to 15 range, in my opinion. You know, he does have a little bit of injury history, right, with the shoulder and things like that. So Mac Jones is going to be a high upside backup in this great offense, historically good offense over the past 5-6 years. So Mac Jones, you know, is a solid addition to the team there. So you'll have a good quarterback for this team no matter what happens. So your pass catchers are, you know, fairly safe, right? In terms of running backs, Christian McCaffrey, as he's healthy, he's going to demand a lot of pass catching workload. Garendo is going to be a high upside handcuff. Then you have, for your wide receivers, Ayuk and Demarcus Robinson. If Ayuk just proceeds to be as bad as he was last year, I think Demarcus Robinson will get in a lot of these. We'll see how Ayuk does off of the ACL tear. Jawan Jennings is, you know, your Z type of player with some big game upside, but outside of that, he's fairly underwhelming. And then Ricky Pearsall, who, if you watch the buy low video, he's included in that. I think he's going to be the focal point in the offense out of the slot position and move him around maybe to the Z as well. And then we have George Kittle, who is the only tight end really of note outside of, you know, they have some blocking utility tight ends as well. But George Kittle's their main pass catcher. So, you know, if he's able to stay healthy, I think he'll be another, you know, top 8 tight end in the league. But he's 31 and is going to be 32 before the next season's over. And just look at some of these trade packages that you can get for him. You can trade him right now for Isaiah Likely, who is a high upside tight end, young as well, and a late first. I would do that all day as well. If you're contending, maybe hold off on this, right? But I think the jump from Likely to Kittle is not too much at this point in time, especially with, you know, you'll see the next guy on this list. I think Likely has even more upside than a lot of others think. Then you have George Kittle for Theo Johnson, who very solid tight end. If he can overcome these injuries, he's going to be a problem in that offense. And then 2 mid to late seconds. I'll do that all day. I think, you know, in that 206, 207 range, you might be able to get Harold Fannin Jr. depending on the landing spot. And he could just be another George Kittle with more yak ability and less blocking prowess. But you can get the replacement for him at the 206, 207 if, you know, maybe Colson Loveland falls that far. I doubt it. But you might be able to get a Harold Fannin or just grab a great running back as well. You know, and then you get your tight end replacement in this trade all by itself in Theo Johnson. If he can stay healthy, he's had a hard career at this point in time with injuries, so we'll see how he recovers, but very talented tight end. Then, this one's a little crazy. George Kittle for Najee Harris, who I think is going to get a lot of work, regardless whether he's efficient or not. He's going to get a lot of work this year, and he's behind a better O-line than he was in Pittsburgh. He had a solid year last year. He's just the king of having, like, okay seasons. But they had J.K. Dobbins, man, as a very, very high upside running back every single week with the amount of workload that they gave him. So we'll see how Najee Harris does. I think he could be a borderline RB1 in 12-team formats. So we'll see how he does. Outside of Najee Harris in this trade, you get Cole Kmet, who, if that Chicago offense does what I think it's going to do, there's a lot of mouths to feed. But Cole Kmet could be one of the better tight ends in the NFL next year if Ben Johnson starts, you know, utilizing Cole Kmet like he did Sam Laporta. Aaron Rodgers, who I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is going to play next year. I'll be completely honest with you. So he's kind of an afterthought in the trade. And then a 2025 late second, I mean. All of that for George Kittle, I'm smashing accepting that. That makes my team much better. You get a free borderline RB1 next year if, my prediction is correct. If not, he'll be a solid RB2. Cole Kmet, who tight end, I think he finishes like the tight end 18 or something like that. He could be very solid next year. Aaron Rodgers, who afterthought in this trade, but if he plays, that's even better. And then the 210. I would do this without Aaron Rodgers, in all honesty. So all of these trades are fantastic for George Kittle, and I would immediately trade him for any of these trade packages. And now time for the last guy on this list. It's Mark Andrews. Main thing for me is, he's got an injury history as well. But the biggest thing for him, he's just a touchdown merchant. And if you know anything about fantasy football, touchdowns are not sustainable. And I think with Isaiah Likely coming on like he did last year, I think he's going to be less and less of a focal point in the offense for the Ravens. They run a lot as is, so I think Mark Andrews, this might be his last season of decent production coming up, especially if he doesn't get hurt, but it's very possible. You see, his value absolutely tanked from a year ago just because of the injuries, right? And he put up, I think, 2 back-to-back 0-point games. But you see his value is still solid. I think they value him as like the tight end 12 or something like that, which at this point, like I said, touchdowns aren't sustainable, and you're going to see what type of trades you can get for him. So before we look at some of the trades, let's go ahead and look at the Ravens offense. So can't get much better at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson has proved basically everybody wrong about him not being able to throw the ball. He seems to get better and better every single year. And Cooper Rush is more than a suitable backup. Then in terms of the running back room, I think they're probably going to draft a running back just because Keaton Mitchell can't stay healthy. Rasheen Ali just doesn't. He might be more of a practice squad guy. Justice Hill's a great pass catcher, and then Derrick Henry is a little bit older, but looks like he's playing better than he ever has. In terms of the pass catchers, you got Zay Flowers, great slot Z type of player, yak threat. Rashad Bateman, who's going to be more of your X. And then DeAndre Hopkins can also play that X/Z role as well. So you got a decent amount of wide receiver help here in this team, and I think that's going to hurt Mark Andrews a good bit too. And then if you look at the tight end room, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely has shown that he can be a prominent tight end in the NFL with, the target volume. And Mark Andrews, he basically cost them a playoff game last year to get to the AFC Championship game with the fumble, right, and the drop on the 2-point conversion. That's rough. That's what he's basically looking at right now, right? That's what his last performance was, and that might hurt his confidence a bit too. I know that sounds a little crazy, but it happens all the time. And with a guy like Isaiah Likely right behind you and basically gunning for your starting role, I think Mark Andrews is going to fade a little bit into the background because he's only the tight end 6 this year because he caught basically a touchdown every single game. He's not going to continue to do that. So let's look at some of these trade packages. So you can get Brenton Strange, who you might see in the buy low video. We'll see. A 2027 second and a 2027 fourth for Mark Andrews. Smash accepting that all day. Mark Andrews for a 2026 second. I'm doing that all day as well, especially if you believe that team is bad and it could be an early second. And then Mark Andrews for a mid-second this year. Like I said, Harold Fannin might go in this range. Depending on how your league values tight ends, you could even get a Colston Loveland here as well. So upgrades in my opinion. I'm smash accepting all of this. If his price right now is a mid to early to mid second, I'm going to grab that early to mid second every single time. And that's our list. Mark Andrews at 5, George Kittle at 4, Brock Bowers at 3, Sam Laporta at 2, and Jonnu Smith at 1. They're not really in any particular order, but I do think Jonnu Smith is the biggest screaming sell high at this point. It's just really important for Dynasty owners to really know when their players are at peak value. And I believe every single one of these players, maybe outside of Kittle might have multiple seasons left in him. And I think out of those guys, I don't think anybody else on this list is going to be higher in their careers at any point as they are right now. So I would ship all of these guys off. Just know the value of your players and be realistic about how their value is going to be impacted in the coming years. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.